wait to get to Boomer Esiason and get his thoughts on Jalen Hurts. I don't know if I've ever seen a guy put up what he's doing this year in my life. Boomer, thank you so much. Boomer, Jalen Hurts' play right out of the gate. What do you make? Thanks, brother, for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure, Dan. Well, you know what? He's making $1.6 million this year. That's what he's making. I wish I could be making that, right now. But I will say that he's going to get a $40 million raise, if not more, starting next year. Remember, he's a second-round draft choice, and this is the third year of a 4-year contract. So he's not going to be playing for that contract next year. I can tell you that. Hey, the reason I love him, he's a second-round draft choice. Nobody gave him a lot of credit coming out of college. He moved from Alabama and left there because of Tua. And, all this kid does is just win. He wins everywhere he goes. He's he's like a gritty type of quarterback who's refined his game into being one of the best in the league. And I think his GM, Howie Roseman, has done an unbelievable job building around him. And if you watch last night, it's hard to get a real read simply because the Houston Texans aren't that good. But you see how good their offensive line is, Dan. So I know a thing or two about having really good offensive lines and bad offensive lines. And Philadelphia has one of the best offensive lines in football. And it helps when you can run the ball and you can run yourself. And then you have wide receivers like they do. So Howie Roseman deserves a lot of credit. But Jalen Hurts is the guy that's pulling the trigger and leading the team.
Boomer, how much did that motivate you when you go in the first round? I remember that day. We were sitting around. We're sitting down at the bar down there, and we're all watching this. Your boy Pete Koch goes, Ron Solt goes, all these guys go, and there you were, the ACC Player of the Year, and you go in the second round. Mm-hmm. Was that something, Boomer, that was like a little bit of a chip on your shoulder when you got to the NFL? Because you ended up being a most valuable player, won an AFC title, all of that.
Yeah, of course it was, Dan. I mean, you know me from back in the day. You know exactly how I was like. Probably a little bit more refined today than I was back when I was 22 years old. But, I just, we had the USFL and everything else involved, and Steve Young had just signed that big deal with the LA Express. He was going to be the first quarterback taken. I was going to be the second quarterback taken. But since he decided to go to the USFL, I ended up, getting drafted by Cincinnati. And as luck turned out, it was a great place for me. I had great coaching around me for the first 8 years of my career, great players around me. So but I remember going into the league probably like Jalen did, with a little bit of a chip on my shoulder and wanting to prove people wrong. I think kind of like Tom Brady did. Tom Brady lasted until the 6th round. So, I mean, the league is littered with guys like that. Not everybody has to be a top 5 pick in order to turn out to be great. I think even Patrick Mahomes, to some extent, was probably a little bit miffed that he lasted as long as he did, believe it or not. So, and that they took Mitch Trubisky in Chicago before they took Patrick Mahomes. So, not that Mitch Trubisky's a bad dude, but he's not Patrick Mahomes, who's a Hall of Fame player in waiting. So, I think that's part of Jalen Hurts. I think it's part of a lot of players in the league that they have this mindset that they think somehow they've been screwed over and they want to show people that they belong.
So we're beyond Ben Bennett, right? I move on.
Yes.
Are the Eagles the best team in the NFC?
I say right now they are. Of course, they're 8-0, but I still say watch out for the 49ers, man. The 49ers, when they are healthy, they are going to be a bitch to deal with. And if there's a team that, if they are healthy, that can go on the road and beat Philadelphia if they have to play in the playoffs, it would be that team, because that team is loaded on the defensive line. They're really good on the offensive line. They just added Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and, of course, George Kittle. So when they are healthy and they are rolling, I think they're probably the biggest threat to the Eagles. And then right after that, I would probably say the Cowboys.
Have you been surprised by Nick Sirianni and Boomer? After the 2-5 start of a year ago, he hands the play-calling duties over to Shane Steichen. And since that time, Boomer, they're 16-4. I mean, I guess it's the evolution of being a head coach. You got to put like the coordinator headsets down and put the main headset on. But have you been surprised?
I'm not really that surprised because, before he came to Philadelphia, he was the offensive coordinator for Frank Reich out in Indianapolis, our buddy Frank. And, Frank thought really highly of him and said, he's ready to go. Now, Nick, had a goofy opening press conference. It was pretty bad. And Philadelphia fans were like, what did we get ourselves into? But, he's a good football coach. He knows the game. He knows, how to manage the team on the sideline, knows how to deal with different situations. To me, the biggest thing is situational football and how a coach handles it. And does he have the decisions, on the tip of his tongue, or is he, flubbing around for them, or whatever the issue may be. So from a pure football standpoint, he's a really good coach. Maybe as a communicator to the media, not so good. That's not his strong point. And he hasn't gotten much better at it either, by the way. But when you're winning, a little bit of goofiness isn't so bad. So I think it's, a head coach should be a head coach to the entire team. And I don't like when head coaches start calling plays on either side of the ball, because I really feel like he's letting down the other side of the team. So my advice to all these coaches would be who you are as a leader of men, and let the people that you hire do their job the way that that they can do it.
3 last questions for you here. Boomer, do you believe in the Cowboys, that the Cowboys can go far? The offensive line is not the same as it was 3 years ago. The running game's not the same. Can Dak carry that team far this year, or do you still have question marks with them?
Well, I think they're probably the third best team, like I was just telling you, in the NFC. And the NFC is kind of light this year. But, to me, when you have pass rushers like DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons, it kind of changes the landscape of the NFL, because who you're playing basically is going to have an opportunity to have their game blown up, because they are so good and they are so dominant. The Giants found that out, even though the Giants are 6-2. The Dallas Cowboys came into MetLife Stadium and just absolutely hammered them. And DeMarcus Lawrence had a 3-sack game against Evan Neal. So I think that defensively, they are really good. They are turnover machines. They're sack generators. Offensively, I think that, they're probably, I would say, close to being a top 10 offense. They're not a top 5 offense in my eyes, even though that they won without Dak Prescott. But I like Dak, and I appreciate who he is as a player. So I think they'll definitely be a player in the playoffs. And they should at least win one home game. Well, they're going to be most likely they're going to be a wild card. So they're going to have to go on the road to win. And that defense is going to have to be healthy, and they're going to have to be playing well in order to do that.
You mentioned the Giants. They get beat by Seattle last week. I mean, Boomer, the only other story I can think of where you saw a guy who we all buried, he's a backup guy, he gets with great coaching with Pete Carroll. Geno Smith here, man. I mean, maybe Rich Gannon, where we saw a guy go around for 9 teams, and all of a sudden he gets an MVP award in Oakland. I mean, have you ever seen anything like this?
I'm sure that there have been players. I didn't realize that would be a question, because I probably would have an answer for you. I do a little study on that. But I will say, here's the beauty about Geno Smith. So he's in his 10th year. He's been in Seattle for 3 years. It's obvious that Seattle had enough of Russell Wilson, that Russell Wilson was unpopular. Russell Wilson was unpopular with his coaching staff, with the players in the locker room. You've heard a lot of the ex-players who have played with Russell basically come down on him as being a phony or of some sort. I don't know that, because I haven't played with Russell, but I do know that the replacement of Russell is going to be beloved, especially if it was his backup for the last 3 years that knows everybody in the building. And as long as that guy can play, then everybody's going to love him. And quite frankly, he's playing with a chip on his shoulder right now as well. You remember, he was a second-round draft pick by the Jets. He actually stuck it to the Giants last week after they beat them, because he said, I dedicate this game to Ben McAdoo and Jerry Reese. That was his former head coach and GM at the Giants, who actually gave him an opportunity to replace Eli Manning, which didn't go over well when he was here. But now I just think that I'm glad for him. I'm happy for him. He stuck with it. He's made a lot of money, and he's in line for another big payday, if he can keep this going. And I do expect them to beat the Arizona Cardinals this week, by the way, Dan.
Wow, man. Final question for you, Boomer. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, do both those guys not make the playoffs? Do one of them make the playoffs? Are you surprised? Is that the biggest surprise, that you're watching the way that Brady and the Packers are playing right now, Brady and the Buccaneers and Aaron Rodgers and the Packers?
I think if you had to ask me which of these two teams has a better chance of making it to the playoffs, I would say it's the Buccaneers, just simply because of the division that they play in. Neither one of these teams is going to make it, I don't believe, as a wild card. I think they're going to have to be a division winner, and I think Minnesota is so far ahead of the Green Bay Packers. As long as Kirk Cousins doesn't get hurt, I don't think Green Bay is going to be able to catch them. Brady, on the other hand, they're right in the mix. They're a game out, I think, of first place in the NFC South. They have a game this week against the Rams. They should light up the Rams. They should light them up. That this should be a game that shouldn't even be close. And then they'll get back on track. And Akeem Hicks is coming back for them. So that's a huge get back for them. And remember, Devin White this week has also been ridiculed and called out for loafing on the field and being lazy on the field. I think with Akeem Hicks back in front of him, because he's the guy now is playing the position that Ndamukong Suh used to play for Tampa Bay, and he's the one that's protecting Devin White. Watch Devin White have about a 15 tackle game and go off this week, and Tom Brady throw for 350 yards and 4 scores, and everybody will be happy down in Tampa again.
Boy, you do so much stuff, Boomer. I mean, NFL with CBS and, the morning show, obviously. How many years now have you been doing the morning show at WFAN now?
I started this in September, 16 years.
16 years. Do you enjoy TV or radio more?
That's kind of interesting. We are simulcast, kind of like you are here. So I'm on TV every morning, so I don't even think about the cameras there. But on Sundays, I got 4 partners that I'm working with. It's a little bit more scripted. It's not nearly as improv as it is every morning for us here in New York. So I guess I would probably say I would enjoy the radio a little bit more, simply because you have a little bit more time to explain yourself. There's a little bit more improv there. And I'm really working with one main partner, but I do have a team that I work with, and we've been together for so long that it's kind of easy when you get there and really enjoy, the work that you have.
Who would have thought, going back and forth to Islip in Maryland, sitting in the car with Vic Kronberg, going back and forth with Victor and Pete Koch. Pete's even doing commercials now. You see Pete doing those commercials?
Yeah.
I love Pete Koch. I stay in touch with him. I hope you do too.
He's doing the old man commercials.
Hey, Boomer, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate it. You always find time for me. Thank you, my friend.
All right, Dano. Take it easy, brother. Have a great one.
You got it. That is Boomer Esiason from WFAN in New York, and, of course, from CBS. We really appreciate him coming aboard with us here. Yeah, we used to go back and forth. My freshman year at Maryland, Boomer came to me and he goes like this. He goes, "Hey, how are you getting back and forth to college?" And I go, "I don't know." And he goes, "Well, my buddy has a car, Pete Koch. He's the Swede in Heartbreak Ridge. Have you guys ever seen the movie Heartbreak Ridge with Clint Eastwood? So he's one of our best friends. And Swede's like 6'7", and he was really a great guy. So that guy, 6'7", is in a car, and another guy from Stanford, his name was Vic Kronberg. He had the only car. So he would go to New York. I'd get in the car with him. He'd go to New York. Boomer and Pete would be in the car. There'd be the 4 of us in this car. Must have did that for a whole year and a half. Yeah, the Swede. All right, we're going to get more into the game last night. And I'm going to have a conversation with you about Jalen Hurts, about going undefeated, about the MVP award. Hit the like button. Keep it here on the National Football Show.